Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hotel RL here in Salt Lake City. My name is Auston Madsen, and here on Monday nights at 7 o'clock, we do a little thing called the Balance Through Art Show. Here we're all about hashtag what is your art. So here we believe that God has given all of us cool little gifts or talents or things that we enjoy doing, and when we share them with other people, it brings delight and happiness in their lives. And I was inspired to do this from a lady named Jane Joy in Bountiful, Utah, about 15 minutes that way. She runs an open mic every Saturday, and it was always a place I could go to kind of share my music and thoughts with people. And as I got older, I'm like, hey, I want to have a place like that for my friends and people that I meet in the community, to just have another venue to share art. And tonight on the show we got Carly Morrow.
Hello.
I said your last name right? And I met her over at this open mic, and she's an amazing poet, and I thought, hey, it'd be really cool to have her on the show. And so, yeah, she's the star of the show tonight. We're going to learn a little bit about her. We're going to learn about this crazy thing on the screen over here. It's a little representation of what we call the life cycle. It's a cycle every human being goes through on probably a daily basis, maybe more frequently or less frequently than that, but we'll get into that later in the show. But you know what? We're going to start off with a little poem from Carly, then we get to know her a little bit and dive into things. So go ahead.
All right. So, since this is kind of like an interview form, I wanted to start off with a poem called Interview. I want to say that yellow is my favorite color. The golden yellow that encompasses warmth and happiness. The color that reminds you of the sun, the flowers, the bees, and childhood memories. I want to surround myself with this warm honey color that makes me nostalgic for the summer I never had. But even though I want to say that yellow is my favorite color, in reality, it isn't. I act like I surround myself in happiness and warmth, but I am drowning in darkness and deceit. The center of flowers are dark, the stinger on a bee is black and sharp, and when the sun goes down, all I see is a gloomy, starless night. Black is my favorite color, because that is all I see, surrounding me, suffocating me. Next question?
Oh. Man. So yeah, it was a poem very similar to that, or just that Carly flavor that I heard. I don't know. I probably heard it. Let's see. How long have you been going to that open mic, Carly?
I started going about a year ago, and I only went like a couple of times here and there. But just recently, I've been trying to go every week. So I've probably performed I've been there probably at least 20 times about, I guess.
Cool. Yeah, as far as I can recall, it's probably been, I don't know. The first time I remember hearing it was probably 4 or 5 months ago, would be my guess. But I didn't I don't make a record of it, but that's awesome. So as you're sharing that poem, it made me think of the song Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones.
Oh, yeah.
I see a red door and I want to paint it black. Man, I'm excited for the show to see where the conversation goes, because Carly has some very deep words, and I think she kind of hits reality on the head a lot of the times. What inspired you to write that poem, if you remember?
I was just looking at pictures, and there was all these pictures of this yellow golden color, and it was always paired with a dark black, and then it started making me think of how well yellow and black go together, like the song Black and Yellow. And so I just started kind of thinking of how opposite those two colors can make you feel, and how when you look at someone, they might seem happy, but that's not always the reality. Someone's always going through something, and so even if yellow, like happiness, is on the top front, there's bound to be darkness and black and hard things underneath.
Couldn't agree more. So how often do you think it is where people put on, or at least it seems like there's a black, their outer shell is black, but on the inside is gold? Have you met people like that? I mean, for me it seems like the other way around seems to happen more often, but have you ever met someone where it's like, upon first glance, it's kind of like there's like a darkness. It doesn't have to necessarily be evil, but like there's like darkness, and then maybe they're like, there's like the gooey, warm center. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that does happen as well. I mean, it's a lot more often that you see like the best side of other people, but there's plenty of people who are like, oh, they must be really sad. They're looking so down, but really that's just their face. They're happy people. You can't make assumptions on people. You have to get to know them. Then you'll find out what's really on the inside.
For sure. I feel inspired to play a song.
Okay.
I think it goes along with what we're talking about. Check 1, 2. All right, so Carly was talking about how you kind of have to get to know someone before you can really, well, not before you can judge them, but don't judge people, period. And it's always better to like know people, but I think in our day and age with social media, it's easy to like put the filter on and like, here's the happiness. And so I wrote a song a few years back called Fences and Walls, and it's kind of like, as I grew up, when I was a kid, just no one had a fence. Like, it was just one big backyard in our neighborhood. And then as people got older and more insecure, more and more fences kind of started popping up. So the song's called Fences and Walls. Everyone has a story. Every story is different. Differences come between us. Like fences in the backyard. Like fences in the backyard. All these fences and these walls slowly come between us all. All these fences and these walls slowly come between us all. What do we have to hide? Feel like Jackal or Mr. Hyde? What do we have to hide? Do you feel like Jackal or Mr. Hyde? Yes, I have a story. Yes, mine is different. It's the differences between us that make us who we are. That make us who we are. We tear down these fences and these walls. See, we're not that different after all. We tear down these fences and these walls. See, we're not that different after all. The only thing we've tried to hide is who we are on the inside. Only thing we've tried to hide is who we are on the inside. Capitalize. Capitalize. Capitalize on who you are. Stop hiding behind that disguise. Capitalize. All right. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to explain this little thing we have here. Then we're going to hop into some more poetry, some more talking, some more music, and just let this thing organically flow however it likes to. So what we talk about here on the show is the life cycle. So we've all probably at some point in our life felt like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, where it's you wake up, same crap, different day. The alarm goes off at 6, the music comes on, you brush your teeth, force feed yourself, get in your car that you still haven't paid off, so you have to go to your job so you can pay off your car to get to your job that you, what? You know, and then you like drive back home and you're so stressed out that you don't really want to be with people. And so, I just unplug myself. Let's see. Check. There we go. But yeah, you know the drill. And often in this cycle we kind of go through every day, hardships will come our way, whether we like it or not. And and you meet those people, and you see it on Facebook all the time, where there's like always that one girl or that one guy where they're always complaining about something, like their life is just this epic train wreck, and it's just and they think it's like these different things coming into life is making it a wreck, when often sometimes you got to look in the mirror and be like, maybe I'm just seeing the world through crap goggles and everything looks poopy or whatever. So what we do here is we just kind of educate people about this cycle so you can be a little bit more conscious about it. So what we have here is, I kind of call it a moral compass. You can call it whatever you want. But it breaks down the cycle into 4 main sections, and then we'll go deeper with kind of 8 subsections. So ideally, we want to be in a state of balance. So that's the top, that's north on the compass. And invariably, we fall out of balance when we kind of let pride take over in our lives, when we think we know everything. So that's kind of symbolized by fire. Then at some point, life sends a curveball or whatever, and we get defeated. And we fall into a state of humility. So that's symbolized by water, where the little fish guy puts out that fire, that pride. And oftentimes when we get humbled, we fall into depression and sadness, and we're just kind of floating at the bottom of this pond. And to get all the way back up facing north, the journey is kind of like hiking a mountain. And so that's kind of where we gain that strength and that inner perspective, the outer perspective of the world around us, and we eventually find our way back to a balanced state. So yeah, we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. But I would love to hear another poem if you got something for us.
Okay, yeah. I actually have a poem called Groundhog Day.
Ooh,
and
perfect.
It talks about that low part of your life where you're being humbled, you're falling into depression, and you're just kind of stuck in the motion. Groundhog Day. The bars of my heart are not to keep people from loving me, not to push people away, and not to protect myself from others. They're to protect me from myself, to keep me from ripping my heart out of my chest, to keep me from plunging a dagger into my soul, and to keep me from hearing the pounding that beats and beats and beats until I want to make it all stop. You may have thought this was a love poem, but there is no love in my life when all I can hear is the screams of my past and my heart and the music. And when the classical music reaches my ears, I want to scream until I can no longer hear it, because the thought of being deaf is more appealing than listening to my alarm. The calling it sings to me, begging me to get up just one more day. But every day it lies, telling me it's just this time, when in reality it's more than a lifetime. And why would I want to wake up when I open my eyes and all I see is darkness engulfing me? The lights are on and the sun is up, but only for everyone else. The only thing that rises for me is my depression and anxiety, reminding me of all the stress that comes with a new day, and how I don't have the energy to do any of it. And don't forget Anna, who tells me I look awful that day, but that's a whole nother problem, and I just want to go back to bed and never wake up. And they ask me how I'm doing, and I tell them just fine. And they say I look tired, and I tell them I stayed up late doing homework, but I am anything but fine, and God knows I did not stay up doing homework. I stayed up avoiding responsibility, saying to myself that if I stayed up, tomorrow would come later. So I stay up for hours past my bedtime, thinking that if I stay up just a bit more, I will want to do the homework that's due tomorrow, and I'll actually end up fully rested and have everything done that I needed to. And now it's the afternoon, and the morning was all a blur. And I don't remember what the teachers have said, but it doesn't matter anyway because it's everyone's favorite time, lunch. I sit down by my friends, not bothering to buy lunch. They must know the drill by now, yet someone still asks if I'm hungry. No, I'm not hungry, I'm starving, but the pressure of society makes me feel sick. So sorry I can't eat because I'm feeling so sick. All of a sudden, I'm home and I have chores and responsibilities, and I try to avoid it all by sleeping and watching a movie. If only I had a life like a movie, where every day is good and there are some bad parts. But don't worry, because everything ends up happily ever after. Unfortunately, the only movie I am in is Groundhog Day, and it never ends, because now that I've avoided my job for the day, it's time to stay up all night and repeat it all in the morning.
Man. Like, if the inner voice in my head had a voice, it would be your voice. Yeah, I know that drill.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I just stay up a little bit later, then it's just one really long day, and I can get everything done if I never go to sleep. And
yeah.
Now I'm so tired, I can't get the things done I need to do. But if I stay up later,
Yeah,
it's insanity.
It's an endless cycle. It's vicious.
Well, yeah. So there's a old saying, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So we're going to talk about how to break out of this cycle of insanity a little bit. So I began this journey talking about pride, because that's our first stumbling block. That's always the first stumbling block with anything, you know. Say you're watching your favorite sports team, and like the team's working really well together. But then that one guy, you know, drains 3 buckets in a row, and he starts kind of like prancing around the court. And next thing you know, he just gets stuffed by another guy, and he gets all sad. And then the team kind of hangs on that guy, and the whole team goes down with him. You see it happen in sports. You see it happen in the office, trying to work on a group project. You see it happen in school, your own life. So we're going to talk about pride. So pride is made up of 2 things. It begins with boastfulness, which doesn't seem bad at first. Like, you're like happy for once. You're like, I'm good at something, and like, look how cool I am, you know? Maybe you go to the open mic. You're like, I got this really dope song that I wrote, this really cool poem, and you perform it, and you're like on top of the world, right? And everyone's patting you on the back. Oh, that was such a good poem, or such a good song. And that boastfulness leads to conceitedness. Now you're like, man, I do write some good poems or some good lyrics. And then freaking Joe gets up there and shreds like the solo from Eruption by Van Halen, or, you know, freaking E.E. Cummings like comes out of the grave and is like, I'll show you poetry. And you're like, I am not a good poet. I thought I was. And everyone's like patting Mr. Cummings on the back. Or Cummings was a woman, wasn't it? No, I'm thinking of someone else.
I don't know.
Whatever. One of those poetry in high school, they don't have no idea what they're talking about, but you know it's good poetry because they're published and you're not. So
Exactly, yeah.
But anyway, so the flame, I use it for multiple reasons. If you think about, I'm a guy. I love fire, right? When I was on the Scouts, I kind of prided myself in being the fire guy. Like, I was the guy that could get any fire started. You know, and I grew up in Ohio where it's really humid, really soggy, and so you had to be really good about finding wood. And just the process of making a fire, I mean, it's a lot different nowadays. We have lighters. We have gasoline. We have things, bam, you want a fire, you got a fire. And especially it's different out here in Utah where if you drop a match in the ground, the whole mountain's on fire.
Yeah.
Not the same case in Ohio. But anyway, the process of making a fire, it's almost like bringing something to life. It's almost like watching a birth. You know, if two parents decide we want to have a kid, there's some preparation and some things that happen. Well, we're all here. So, but there's this preparing. You figure out if it's a boy or girl. You buy it some clothes. You buy some diapers. Like building a fire, you have to gather sticks of different sizes. You have to find something to start the fire. And so in our lives, the way that pride works is, maybe as a poet or a musician, maybe those early formulative years, it's like learning the scales or the chords, or learning about, here's a AABB structure, or maybe there is no structure, but just learning how words flow together and how rhymes work, and understanding, grabbing a thesaurus and looking up, there's like 50 words that mean the same word but in slightly different ways, and I can kind of twist things, and it's like this like liquid architecture sort of thing. But it's, there's really nothing to boast about when you're learning those scales. It's like, I didn't come up with this scale, I didn't come up with this chord, like I didn't make up the word flabbergasted, but it's in my arsenal. I can use it in a sentence in my own creative way. And where that boastfulness kind of can start to come in is like, you might rhyme flabbergasted with orange somehow, and everyone's freaking out because it's like, no one's ever done that before, and you're like, I know.
I'm awesome.
Right. And so, where am I going with this? So, back to building a fire, right? So, all the little sticks and the kindling we gather for the fire is like learning the basics of whatever it is you do with your art. And then when you finally ignite that thing and you start blowing on it, it starts to grow. And this is where conceit comes into play, and this is where we run into some issues. So many times when I go camping, someone else would take over fire duty, and I'd be like, okay, let's see how well you do, Jimmy. And they get a great fire going, and we're all sitting around it just like zoning out like you do when you're camping, just like, whoa, that's a pretty cool fire. But what happens when you don't put more wood on it?
It's going to die out.
Yeah. And that's the issue with conceit. It's this issue of forgetting that for your fire to maintain itself or to grow, you need outside resources to take in and add to so your fire can grow. And if you fail to recognize that, if you fail to run out and grab more wood to put it on the fire, and if you fail to recognize that you did not make that wood, you found it. It was already there. When you realize that, you can't take pride in that. That puts you back in a kind of a state of balance. But it's the kids that make the fire, they sit back, like, this is great. We're going to sit here for 5 hours and just watch it without doing anything.
Yeah.
Then it starts to go out. Or sometimes you have tons of wood ready, and you're ready to go for just hours and sit and talk. And the next thing you know, you feel something wet land on your head, and you look up, and the clouds roll in. Next thing you know, it's just dumping. And even though you're prepared, your fire goes out. So there's different circumstances, either from own neglect or outside circumstances, that can kind of put out your fire, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just talked for a very long time. Like, did you have any thoughts on that, or some of your own input concerning pride, or how that works in your life with your art or just your everyday life?
Well, I think when your prideful life's definitely going to throw you a curveball. You're going to get knocked down again. But I think it's just important to be more aware of yourself, because you're not going to be this prideful, you're not going to be on top of the world all the time. You're going to have to get knocked down, and so just prepare yourself for that.
For sure. And so, yeah, where we run into issues is when we're not prepared, and the rest of the cycle kind of continues. Before we go to the next section, if you have another piece of poetry to read, I would love to hear it.
All right.
We would love to hear it.
Okay, let's. So this one is called She Lived as Frost but Felt Like Fire. Some say she wept, some say she cried. She never told anyone she wished she had died. The winter came early, the fall left too soon. All she's been doing is sleeping till noon. The wolf keeps her up late into night. She keeps on trying, but she never takes flight. The frost makes her cold, the heat is too hot. You are the only thing that she's got. When you left, she tried not to weep. All she tried was to go to sleep. Forever but never, for when she awoke, she felt like her life was just a joke. The laughing and mocking got to her fast. She decided to fight back at last. You thought she was easy, but not anymore. You have just made her start to declare war. She's fire, she's fast, she doesn't even think about her past. So learn from her and her story, and know not to hurt, because she's as hot as the Utah desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of talks about the fire, and you know, it's not always a bad thing. It can help you to get out of that rut, but if you keep going that way, you know, life's still going to hurt you.
Exactly. So, we learned about pride. It's a combination of unchecked boastfulness, which turns into unchecked conceitedness. And, you know, we're hot, we're on fire, and we forget that life has a way of throwing us curveballs. And so, life throws us a curveball. Bam. And we get defeated. So now we're entering the humility quadrant. And a lot of times when we get defeated, right along with it is this ego death. So pride and ego kind of equal the same thing. But yeah, it's sad. It's frustrating. And I was just talking with my buddy Lee earlier today about this very thing. Yeah, I went to pick him up. We were going to go play some music at this nursing home, and I'm like, how's it going, man? And he's like, I could tell he was down. Yeah, he was kind of frustrated. He had just sold his truck, lost his job, was like living with his parents, and you know, he has siblings who are younger than him that already like have kids and family, and he's like wants to be there but he's not, and so he's just kind of frustrated, and the advice I was able to give him, I'm not always in a position to give advice because I've felt like him before, like, man, I wish I was here, but I feel like I'm down here. And for me, the past couple weeks have been very good. For varying reasons, but the 2 weeks before that, I was really down, really depressed. Didn't want to leave the house. Just kind of had a lot of responsibility that I was avoiding and thought I could just hide. I'm like, yeah. But hopefully we get back to where we started. But essentially, the advice I was able to give him was, life has a way of throwing those unpredictable curveballs. Sometimes it's a really good curveball, and you smack that thing out of the park, and it's awesome. And the way I talked about it was like riding a wave. So I think surfing, you can draw a lot about life from surfing, but it's hard. Like, you paddle out. Sometimes you're waiting for a long time, and you see your wave rolling in. And how often do we catch a really good wave, and before we even get to shore, before the wave is even close to being done with us or us with the wave, we're riding, and then we see Jimmy over here riding some like monster wave, and we're like, oh dang, I should have waited longer to catch that wave. And then you get distracted from the present moment, and next thing you know,
Yeah.
You're knocked down. But even if you do catch a good wave and you're not caring about what Jimmy's doing or Susan or whoever, that wave eventually crashes into the shore and the ride is over. And so what I told him was I'm like, Lee, you know how my life is. It's a series of ups and downs, but so many times before I even hit the peak of the up, of the good times, I remind myself, well, there's a lot of crap coming around the corner, whether I know it or not. Mm-hmm. But having that mentality, it brings that sadness upon me quicker than it probably should have came. And so I was basically just sharing with him, if a good wave comes, ride that good wave and just enjoy the good wave, And eventually you'll crash into the shore, and then you have a choice. You can sit in the sand and soak up the sun and rest and enjoy that moment. Or if you want to get better at surfing, paddle out again. Find the next best wave, Right. But that journey of paddling out there and getting smashed before you clear the breaking waves, it's not fun. But would you rather do that and get better at surfing, or sit on the beach and turn into a burnt potato chip?
Right.
But yeah, I just felt like sharing that, and I forgot where we're going with that, but
I think that's good. I mean, enjoy the moment while it lasts, while you're riding that wave. Enjoy it. You don't have to be like, oh man, it's almost over. I'm going to be sitting on the sand after this. Because then you're not going to enjoy it. You're just going to want to sit there afterwards. You're just going to wallow in your pity. But you can enjoy it while it lasts. And then you can get back up and be like, wow, that was so fun. Not get on the sand and be like, yeah, that wasn't that great. I was just thinking about this time, the whole ride. But you can, if you're enjoying it, you're going to want to get out there again.
For sure. Awesome. So this is... Okay. So we've ended this, life's defeated us, or we've defeated ourselves, or whatever happens, and we fall into this state of humility. And, we've crashed into the beach, and you can sit on the sand bummed out, and while watching all your friends get really good at surfing, and oftentimes we'll initiate this this downward spiral where the longer you sit in the sand and be sad about yourself, your friends are going to be getting better at surfing. Right. And that will just perpetuate until you make the decision to get out there again. And so here, people have seen this symbol before on on the bumpers of cars. It's the little Jesus fish. So I'm a spiritual guy. I talk about God, oh man, we're downtown in a city and there's a bunch of liberals running around and they're going to hate me, but I think I have to talk about God when I talk about this, because for me this was a God thing. It was an answer to a prayer where all this came from, so got to give the credit back where credit's due. So we're at rock bottom. We've sunk to the bottom of this ocean of our own sadness and despair. And we're looking back up at the surface, and it is impossibly far away. And unless someone dives in after us to pull us out of it, we're going to die, And so the idea of the Jesus fish, or the Savior, oftentimes we have to realize that I can't get out of this mess on my own. And I think the hardest part of pride people have to swallow in that instance is, a lot of people think, well, if I dug myself into this hole, I can dig myself out. But a lot of times you can't. Especially if, the analogy I use here all the time is falling into a well. If there's no rope or anything for you to, you're going to drown eventually. you know.
Yeah.
And so there's this idea that for us to get out of that deep, dark place, you have to look towards a Savior. In the spiritual realm, for me, that is Jesus. You know, in the material world, you know, maybe it's counselors. You know, like I deal with depression, bipolar disorder. I've had to go see counselors because it's like they're in a way a savior for me because like they have that upper ground. They can reach down and pull me out and help me understand my situation better or whatnot. But for you, Carly, in the times that like you've gotten down, like what have you turned to kind of something outside of yourself to pull you basically away from your destruction or despair?
You know, that's been really difficult for me. I'm prone to just sitting there and wallowing and just not trying hard enough. But I think a big thing that has helped me is, you know, my family. I can turn to my family, and they're a great support system for me. And also, yeah, I go to therapists, I go to counselors. I've been to the hospital, and they can help a lot. I mean, they're professionals, and they're there to help you. So I think it's just important, like, even if you don't think you have anyone, there's always someone. You can turn to doctors. You can trust your friends, your family. You can trust God. You can trust yourself if you know that you need to go get help. Trust yourself. Believe in yourself.
For sure. I'm going to share a song.
Okay.
All our talk of surfing and beaches. I feel like sharing this song. It's called Walking in the Sand. Deceptive state of mind. Weeks that have passed can never be retrieved. I let them pass me by. Now I'll say goodbye. But now I'll say hello to the better days ahead. Instead of lying in my bed wishing I were dead. Now I'll say hello to the better days ahead. Instead of lying in my bed wishing I were dead. Life used to be like walking in the sand. 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
feet snow. I no longer stare at you. Through my room's dusty window. 'Cause now I'm free from this cold, dark cell, no longer trapped in my self-induced hell. Now I'm free from this cold, dark cell, no longer trapped in my self-induced hell. Life used to be like walking through the sand, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Life used to be like walking through the sand, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Life used to be like walking through the sand, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Life used to be like walking through the sand, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Now, the only thing I fear is my ability to see clear. Now, the only thing I fear is my ability to see clear. Now, the only thing I fear is my ability to see clear. Now, the only thing I fear is my ability to see clear. But it's alright, I've no need to be afraid. 'Cause now I have the light to lead the way. It's alright, I don't need to be afraid. 'Cause now I have the light to lead the way. It's alright, I don't need to be afraid. 'Cause now I have the light to lead the way. Thank you, Madison Square Garden.
That was great. I have a poem, and it's kind of about you're never alone. There's people who are like you, who have gone through similar things as you, and that you have that support. And it's called A Poem for the People. This poem is for you, and for me, and for all those who will never even hear or read it. A poem for the emotional bottles, a poem for the criers and the lovers, the creators and the quiet. It's for the early birds and the night owls, the insomniacs and the oversleepers. It's for the wishers and the believers, and also for the non-believers and skeptics. It's a poem for those who wish they were more and those who wish they were less of a mess. All of you girls that look up to your sisters with the scars on your wrists that carve the picture of acceptance. All you boys who look up to your brothers with the scars on your shins from cleaning in the weight room. This one goes out to you. And I'm writing this to you guys because I need you to know that I know you. I am you. And you don't have to talk to be seen. And the only way to be seen is not from doing something phenomenal and amazing or stupid and impulsive. I can see it in your eyes and in the way you sit in your chair. I see it when you're walking down the halls. I see it when you think no one is looking at you because you're just another face. And that may be true. This world is big and there are many faces. But you need to understand, you are the world. You are everything that you see in the stars. You are the ocean and you are the sun. You are the broken pencil and the pen out of ink. You are the ripped pages of poems you didn't think you could write. And you are the universe in its whole. And I am an emotional bottle. And when I cry, I am a crier in the dark. I am a crier to the heavens, but I will not cry tears. I will sing. I will sing for the dropouts and the scholars. I will sing for the numb, the lonely, and the weepy. I will sing for the happy, and even those who are feeling completely okay. I sing for my mom and my dad, my sisters and brother, and I sing songs of love. I sing for my regrets, the things I never did because I don't really feel like it, and I never got around to it. Somebody else will do it. It's already been done. I can't do that. I sing for the fears and for the reliefs, and I sing for the people who are too afraid to have a voice. I know you because I am you. I know the hope associated with being a dreamer and the dread associated with a new day. This is for you. I see you, and I believe in you.
I remember when you shared that one in open mic. I loved it.
Thank you.
When did you write that? Do you know?
I wrote that, let's see here, probably 4 months ago.
What inspired you to write that?
I was just by myself. I was at the park, and there were lots of people, just tons of people, and I was just looking around, and I could kind of just look at someone and be like, wow, I can understand what they're going through, even though, I knew nothing about them, but I just felt like I could connect to people in that way, and that everyone has something they can connect to each other. We've all experienced some of the same things in one way or another. We're not exactly the same, but we've experienced some of the same things, and so I think it's important to know, you're not alone. There are people out there who've been going through what you're going through, and even if it's not, the exact situation, they've had those same feelings.
Absolutely. Something I say, and I get mixed reviews, but I feel like we're all kind of the same person, just born into different bodies, into different places, and different genders and whatnot. It's like there's just that humanness about everybody that is the same. And so this is a little experience I had that was pretty life-changing. So when I was in high school, I was very homophobic. I'm just like, if you're gay, stay away from me. You're weird, I don't like that. And kind of, and I had some very just, not just you do you, and whatever, it was I was not militant, but, very judgmental. And a few years ago, I had this experience where, I won't go into the details of the experience, but it was definitely, I was having an experience. And while I was having this experience, I was laying down on a couch at my buddy's apartment, and his roommate is homosexual. And I'm just kind of kind of taking a nap, kind of daydreaming, and his buddy's sitting there on the other end of the couch just reading a book. And I'm just kind of like, through like squinted fake sleeping eyes, just observing this guy. And that's where that thought came from. I'm like, I bet if I was born into his body, with his brain, chemistry, into his situation, I would be just as gay as him. You know? Yeah. And this is also from years of trying to study a little bit of psychology and philosophy and whatnot, but from that moment on, I was like, who am I to judge anybody for any belief that they have? You know?
Right.
Like, they're not me, I'm not them, what do I know about them? Like, what? Half the time, I don't even know what's going on in my own head, you know? I'm still trying to figure that out, so, like, who am I to, like, judge where someone else is coming from if even myself, I don't know what's going on? But I think there are some underlying human morals, though, some, like, moral truths that I believe are instilled in us by God, that when we're straying from those truths, it is kind of our duty to ourselves and to others to be like, bro, you probably shouldn't go down that path. Or like, Sue, like, you've gone back to the guy 5 times and he still keeps treating you like trash. Like, is it going to be different this time? But I mean, you know what I'm saying. Right. But yeah, that poem stuck with me so much because that's just like a belief that I have that, like, you know, we're really not that different. Like, you just grew up in this part of town, I grew up in this part of town, and you're a girl and I'm a guy, you know?
Right.
But that's cool, though.
I actually have another poem that kind of talks about differences and similarities, and it's called Spot the Difference. Being different. Oh my gosh, if you even knew what difference was, are you sure that you are aware that difference is bad? I have changed myself so many times for people that mean nothing to me, just because I want to be accepted, just because I don't want to be the same as everyone else, but I want to be the same as you, so you'll notice me, because we are blind to the beauty of uniqueness. It is weird, it is uncomfortable, it is not like us. Even if I was different, I would be just like somebody else who is different in the same way as me. So what is different in the way that no one else thinks like you, dresses like you, acts like you, talks like you, listens to the same music as you, prays like you, loves like you, goes through similar problems? What if you were the only you there was? Because really what shapes us are things we learned from other people. We are bits and pieces of others. So really, when Mama tells you to just be yourself, what she really means is just be like everyone else that you have ever known, but just create it in the right order. Everyone we bump shoulders with rubs a little bit of themselves onto our shirts. My grandma used to say every single strip of color in our irises doesn't belong to us. It's been passed down through generations. Everything we've ever said or done or thought has already been thought about by someone else. We conform and we observe and we copy like photo machines, like photos from disposable cameras. We dance from moves we've learned, tell jokes that we've heard, listen to music someone else has made for us to listen to. What is difference if our whole life consists of things that aren't us? What have we rubbed off? Is it different? Thank you.
Oh, God. That's, I think it was, I don't know who wrote Ecclesiastes. It's in the Old Testament, but it just said it's written by the preacher. I don't know if it was King Solomon or one of his sons, but it was a really wise guy, and his whole purpose in life was to understand and gain wisdom. And throughout this whole book of Ecclesiastes, you hear him talk about how there's no new thing under the sun. You know? It just made me think of that.
Yeah.
But it's so true. Like, you are just a big collage of, like, other
Things
people.
you have learned, yeah.
The iris thing, I thought that was cool. I was imagining, like, what if, like, if we're going to trace it back to Adam and Eve,
Right.
there's just, like, one sliver of, like, blue where, like,
That we have one sliver of blue from, like, Adam or Eve. Like,
right. But I'm saying, but for them, since if no one came before them, what if it was like a little, like, you know, those like little loading circles like on the computer? There's just like one, and it's just like a big white eye with like a little bit of blue in it, and then like,
Interesting.
you know, Cain and Abel had like a little bit more, and now but then ours, it's like that's why it looks like a galaxy, you know, like when you look into an eye, there's just like billions
so
and
many
billions of
colors.
like, that's cool. Oh man, we're going down the rabbit hole, guys. Okay, so we're going to talk about strength here. So when we get pulled out of that dark place from, you know, the countless people we know and all the help that we get, we're trying to get back to this state of balance, right? And to get there, there's like this mountain in our way. And just the look of the mountain often makes people dive back into the ocean. Like, I'm not going to deal with that mountain. I can't even swim. Now I have to climb? Like, what is this? So F stands for fragile. At the beginning of the journey, we're fragile. This is a great story. So my last high adventure hike when I was in Boy Scouts, my clan that I had grown up scouting with, we decided to go to, it's called the Pictured Rocks National Lake Shore up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And it's these like 200-foot cliffs that go along Lake Superior, and it's just mind-blowing. And one of our fellow scouts is named Steven, big kid. But like, he was pretty active, like he did rugby and football, but he's just a big guy. You know, we're all these skinny, little energetic scouts, and so it's a 60-mile hike, and we're doing it throughout a week. And day one, it was only like maybe a 5-mile hike. We get to camp, and we could tell Steven was kind of struggling. And as we set up camp, I'm kind of looking off in the woods, and I see what looks like just this big wall. I'm like, what is that, guys? Let's go check it out. So we run up to this wall, and it's a freaking, it's sand. And it's a sand dune in the middle of the woods. And then we realize that the woods came up to the edge of like this big old thing of sand dunes. And so we climb this sand dune, and it's the dunes that drop into Lake Superior. One of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. And we're all up there playing in the sand, and finally Steven crests the hill, and his eyes are like moving around his head, and like he's about to faint. And we kind of like gather him up, and we're like, we need to take you back to camp. And so it turns out he was severely dehydrated. And so we get him hydrated, we get some food in him, and we're like, Steven, like, you got to be real with us. Like, this is day one. We're only 5 miles from the car. Like, we'll like, if you're not going to do it, none of us are. Like, we can head back. And Steven was really thinking about turning around. But, you know, as nice as we were trying to be, of course, all of us wanted to go on this hike, you know. And so I think he did feel a little bit pressured, but he decided to stay. But we just made sure that he stayed hydrated and stayed well fed. And it was a 5 or 6 day hike, and by day 3, he was leading everyone.
Wow.
And like, you just saw this like transformation from the inside out. Like, you know, big guy, but he's insecure, you know. But there was just this change, and he became our leader, you know. And so like the other part of the equation is, so we're talking about strength. So strength is realizing you're fragile. You're a singular human being. You're not a big shot, really, you know. In the grand scheme of things, you're going to die eventually. Maybe you'll leave a little bit of a legacy behind you, but in a couple hundred years, you know, even if your name's preserved in a textbook, that textbook's going to be gone a couple hundred years after that. And that's just generally speaking. You know, not all of us are Leonardo da Vinci's who, you know, or Jesus or whatever. Will always be there. But we realize we're fragile, but it's when we realize we can rely on a greater power than ourselves, that we came from that greater power, that that greater power is a part of us, and we're a part of that greater power, that we can move mountains. And so for Stephen, like, I'm sure he was praying. But that greater power was that sense of community within that brotherhood of these scouts. And, we were all encouraging him. And after day 3, he was encouraging us. He's like, come on, guys. And we were like, our 50-pound pack's like half our weight, and his 50-pound pack's like, maybe a fifth of his weight. So it was really cool. But the reason I use a mountain to symbolize strength is, any major mountain in life, you're going to need a guide. You're going to need someone who's done the trail, who knows where the pitfalls are, and can get you to the top. And when you get to the top, you're able to look back down on that valley you came from. And your little car is now a dot. Your house is a speck. Where you work, another dot. And, life does become stressful and unbearable when we never leave our little dot. Because when you're in the dot, it's not a little dot. Like, it is heavy, it is real. Like, my depression's so bad right now. My mom's yelling at me. I'm not doing what I need to be doing, yada, yada, yada. You get to the top of that mountain, and you're like, can't hear you, Mom. Or, oh, work? Like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm on top of a mountain. But the reality is, like, that is still part of your reality. But now you've zoomed back, and it's like, is it really that big of a deal?
Right.
And then there's someone in an airplane flying above you saying, and you're a speck now, even though you're on top of a mountain. And so that's a little bit of strength. I have another song.
Okay.
I'll show you a song. Check. Okay, I got 3 songs about mountains, but I have to pick one. So we can do a really happy, upbeat one. That's more like a rap. Then I got one that's like a upbeat folk rock song. Then I got one that's like really introspective, that gets really intense at the end with some awesome guitar work.
That's hard because those all sound really good. But I'm leaning towards like that first one, the happy rap.
Okay. The song's called Mountain Hike. It's late September and the air is cool. I drive my siblings off to school. My schedule is free, my agenda ain't tight. What a perfect day for a mountain hike. I prepare what I need for this day of fun. I grab some water and a hat for the sun. And after I'm packed, I load my car and I drive to the trail. It ain't too far. I load my pack and I start to stretch. I imagine the climb, a simple sketch. After I'm stretched, I'm feeling fine. I pick up my feet and I start to climb. The trail, like life, starts off easy, 'cause I'm not tired or feeling queasy. So the trail begins to incline. It's rocky and bumpy like a crooked spine. But
It's still early, my footing is sturdy, but it'd be easier to be a little birdie, to fly in the air above the trees and glide without effort on the breeze. I'm gonna climb a mountain today and enjoy the weather the very best way. It is almost the end of September, and this will be a hike to remember. I'm gonna climb a mountain today and enjoy the weather the very best way. It is almost the end of September, and this will be a hike to remember. I'm always looking at the view behind me, a breathtaking view of the Salt Lake Valley, but looking behind at the past caused me not to move as fast. That's a metaphor. I gotta keep my head up and never look back, and pick up the pace when I start to slack, 'cause I reach the summit as fast as I can. I gotta be true and follow this plan. But it's alright to smell the flowers and bask in the light the sun showers. Enjoy nature's beauty, can't be hurried or quickly forgotten to simply be buried. So as I climbed, I made a little stop to see how close I was to the top, 'cause hill after hill I'd slightly ponder if this hike could take any longer. I just climbed a mountain today and enjoyed the weather the very best way. It was almost the end of September, and this will be a hike to remember.
I really like that. That's such a fun song. Like, so exciting.
Check it, check. All right, so the probably the saddest part about hiking a mountain is you get up there, you're feeling all good. It's been like really hard, and you're at the top, and then you're like, I gotta hike back down. Crap. Yeah, people often think the top of the mountain is the end of the hike. It's halfway. But the cool thing is, as you climb the mountain, maybe you take some pictures with your phone, you see some cool things. Really, you gain perspective, and so you get to the top, and eventually you have to hike back down. So we're finally entering the balance part of the quadrant, of the cycle. So what do we learn after we go through the trial and hike the mountain? We learn that there's sharps and flats in life, just like in music. There's going to be the hard climbs and the easy meadows. There's black and white. There's day and night. We were talking earlier about your poem. Is it called Yellow and Black, or what's the name of it? Interview. So earlier we were talking about that poem and how, like, sadness, it's not something that needs to be eliminated out of life. Sadness provides that contrast, and you don't have to dwell in it or seek it, but when it comes your way, yeah, it's hard, but then when the good times come, they're that much more vivid and real. And
And so what that little piece of the pie symbolizes is knowledge, knowing the good from the bad, knowing the dark from the light. And the final piece of the pie for the equation for balance is A. It's accountability. As we go through these journeys, we gain knowledge, but we often hear that there's a difference between being book smart and street smart. So anyone can, everyone has access to a smartphone, but how someone uses their smartphone kind of reveals how smart that person is or isn't.
Right.
If you're using a supercomputer to do nothing but scroll Facebook all day when you could be learning a new language or like how to do your art better or whatever, not necessarily that person's dumb. Maybe that's what they enjoy about the phone is that it connects them to social media or whatever. But it's the difference between being wise and being smart. To me, wisdom is knowledge in action. And so, the one thing I left out. So the star, why is that in the balance quadrant? It symbolizes the North Star. If this is a compass, that is where you want to be oriented. A map is of no use if you don't know north from south.
Right.
C.S. Lewis said, in regards to the truth, you might have the fastest car in the world, but if you're driving 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction, you're just 100 miles away from where you need to go. Where the guy that can maybe their car only goes 50 miles an hour, but they're driving in the right direction, they're going to get there before you, because real progress comes from aligning yourself with truth first and then making steps in that direction. So that's how we get that balance in life is, knowing what truth is, knowing where true north is, and setting our compass to that. And what is truth? People have been asking that question since, the beginning of time. And I don't think it's that complicated. I have a Christian belief system, and what Christ taught, I think, was pretty straightforward. Love and respect your maker. So for some people, they just call it the universe. Some people, it's their parents and their parents before them. But respect where you came from and love that, because if you wouldn't be here without that. And then Christ also taught love your neighbor. And for me, it's through our art that we can really love our neighbor, Anyone can work in a factory or make a pizza, but it's but how does Carly make the pizza? Or how does Carly string the words together to make the poetry? Or how does Steve, ride his bike in such a cool way that it makes people go, wow, look how Steve rides his bike,
Right.
And I think that's something that's often missed in religion a lot of the times. A lot of times religion will be here's the prescribed procedure to be right with God or right with people. But it's but when can your God-given personality shine if you're confined to this structure, And you can find ways. I've done it before, but we do have a way of overcomplicating life, I believe, and for me, my art is a way of being aware of that, how complicated it gets, and that's what I love about your poetry, is you are a listener, you're an observer, and when we actually take the time to listen and observe the reality around us, we realize how much of it is complete just hogwash.
Right.
And ridiculous. And it's that guy's totally just putting on a front, and he doesn't even know this guy, and he doesn't know him, and he's putting on a front, and it's the real them isn't even there. And why are they even doing that job? They don't even like it. They love golf, why don't they golf more and do that less or whatever? But yeah, I'm blabbering now. But
That's good.
like, do you have more poetry or something good to say? I'm just gonna shut up for a second.
Well, no, I like what you're saying. How you don't know people, but everyone has something unique to give. Everyone's has their strengths and their weaknesses. And I wrote this poem called "The Second Sight," and it's kind of about strengths, how some people are good at some things and others not so great at that same thing, but we all have our gifts. Second sight. I cannot weave a tapestry whose vibrant colors gleam, but I can thread a needle and sew a little seam. I have no silver notes to turn into a lovely song, but I can sit and listen to the tune and hum along. I cannot preach a sermon to edify the ear, but I can say a little prayer the Lord can always hear. I cannot climb a mountain all wreathed in clouds of white, but I can walk a woodland path and feel my heart grow light. I cannot paint a masterpiece, I cannot carve in stone, but there is something I can do that is my very own. For though I do not weave or climb, nor paint or carve or sing, somehow I find a bit of God in every living thing. And I just like that because, everyone has unique gifts. You don't have to be good at everything. Like, some people are great at singing, some aren't. Some people can create art, some are better, like, physically, and it's just, everyone is so unique, and you all have those things. And part of life, I think, when you find that balance is when you find what you're good at and what you're not so good at, just, like, being happy and trying to help others find what they're good at and helping other people be happy and helping other people get to that balance.
Dang straight. And I think along with that, so we have to respect everyone's individual journey. But I think part of what our duty is to point people to, like, these are truths to live by, but, like, live them out in your unique way. And just kind of what it made me think about is, let's say truth is the top of the mountain. You might already be halfway up the mountain, and you see a friend who's just starting the journey. And they might maybe there's 50 different trails at the top of the mountain, and they're starting on a completely different trail than you did. But, as long as you can, like, call out encouragement, like, hey, like, just keep climbing up,
Right.
That's all it takes. I'm gonna share a song, share a few last thoughts to kind of wrap up this, and then if you have another poem, we'll kind of make it a show. How's that sound?
All right, sounds good.
All right. This song is called Eyes Blind.
such ideas into my mind. I close my eyes to lift the blinds, so my eyes don't become the eraser. Too many times we only use our eyes as a means to find the truth in a sea of lies, but our eyes will deceive us despite our countless tries. We only see what we want to see. This is our demise. This is our demise. My eyes are still shut, but I can see with my ears. Acoustic tones calm my fears and lift me from the ruts. I was in was dug by my sins, but I climb out All right, this is part of the show where I get amped up and I call people to action. Get off your lazy butts. I mean, it's good to be lazy. You know, if you're working hard, then the laziness just feels so good. Because you're not like in the back of your head like, crap, there's stuff I got to be doing. All right, anyway. So sometimes when I show it to people this for the first time, they're like, what is this, like some weird like pagan satanic crap? Because they're like, oh, that's like the pagan star. I'm like, it's a freaking star you've been drawn since you were 5 years old. It's just a star, guys. Like, what's the big deal? And then they're like, well, what are these devil horns? And like, all right, so let me explain this so everyone knows what's happening. So we've learned about this cycle. So, you know, we fall out of balance when we get boastful about ourselves, and then life humbles us. We want to be balanced again, so we climb the mountain, we gain knowledge, accountability. And so you'd think to live a happy, well-balanced life, you'd just be like, oh, if I'm just simply accountable to what I know, then I can just live in that balance. And you can do that for the most part. I'm a firm believer that most people who have reached the age of adulthood or even kindergarten, you know the basics of living a good, happy life. Your parents are like, eat your veggies, make sure you take your nap, get enough sleep, do well in school, try your hardest, be nice to others. You know, these like basics we've been taught our whole lives. But we're not very good at being accountable to that. But I'm a believer that you could not read another thing or learn any new thing from this point on in your life, but if you could like recall what you already know or have been taught, you'd be pretty happy without learning a darn new thing. I think that's why indigenous cultures, where they have no access to like the internet or knowledge besides like what they learn in their tribe, they're pretty happy because it's this whole idea of ignorance is bliss. You know, if you know the 5 steps to be happy and that's it, and you have your whole life to like do these 5 steps, you'll probably get pretty good at it. But we live in this culture where it's like, you know, there's 5 steps this week, and then there's, oh, this new fad diet comes out, and here's the 5 steps, you know, and then the week after that, you know, here's the new 5 steps. It's like, holy crap. You know, you're just, you're just repackaging the same 5 steps in a slightly different way. So, but the thing is, we are geared to, we want to learn more. We want to like learn new things. And guess what? To learn new things, you have to go on this journey all over again. But the fun thing is, you don't have to do it in a prideful, self-conceited way. Like I said before, like I'm a believer in God. Like things change when instead of being proud about yourself and your own accomplishments, you're proud about the accomplishments of your friends or your family. Or like you're like hiking this mountain, you're like, praise the Lord, look at this freaking awesome thing that He made, you know? It's incredible. So as we go through the journey, we have to remember what does bring us balance, but to enjoy the journey, you know? Boast about, you know, say you're learning a new skill, give credit to your teacher. When you're conceited, don't be full of a selfish pride. Be full of like this selfless pride. Like, man, this is really cool. And then, you know, when you're learning new things, you're going to get defeated. Like when I was first learning guitar, skin was literally peeling off my fingertips because I had to build calluses. And I had to wait. You know, I had to wait till the skin healed. And it was defeating. And there was an ego death. And I realized, okay, I'm fragile, but the good Lord gave me this body that will heal and grow back. And in that downtime, I like listened to like more music that I enjoyed, and like that music rubbed off on me, like we talked about, and influenced me. And then when my fingers healed, I shredded the guitar again. And then I almost broke my wrist skateboarding, so I like went through the cycle again, yada yada yada. So back to the devil horns. I was getting off track. So they're not devil horns. This is a guy. So the dude with the crown, 3 triangles, stands for the number 333. That's just my lucky number, so I put that there. But it's actually, if you want to get into numerology and stuff, it's actually like a very like spiritually charged good number. It's like the opposite of 666. So it's the idea that, anyway, I just like it. But anyway,
So what it is, it's a guy standing with his arms in the air. And the center of his being is a big O. Basically it's saying, be open to life. Like, people don't do this very often. Unless you're like in a yoga class that you paid for, so you could pay to stand there in weird positions. You know, you go do that in the park by yourself, people are like, should we call the cops? Is this guy on drugs? But no, I'll pay $50 to go to this yoga session where this is okay to do. But that's kind of how life is. Like, everywhere we walk into, there's like the mini little game being played. Like, there's a game being played right here in this hotel. You know, like, we got team member number 1 keeping the floors clean, you know, doing a great job. We got Fatima over here checking people in. You know, she's like that member of the game. This guy's checking people out, you know. We got the audience, you know, watching the but well, like, that's something that's taken me years to figure out. Was, you know, I'm this kind of rebellious, free-spirited punk rock guy, and but, you know, what I had to realize is, like, you know, at work, there's a system, there's rules for the game, and if you want to be successful at the work game, you play by those rules. You know, if you want to do good in school, do your homework, you know. And then there's like rules for your body. If you don't want to die, eat food and drink water, get enough sleep. And I'm getting off track again. This is where I just get fired up and kind of lose my mind. So basically, life is very simple. We need to be open to life. We need to be open to new experiences. Oftentimes, when that curveball, the bad curveball comes, our instinct is to curl up. And sometimes that is necessary. You can also imagine a different picture here where it's actually a turtle instead of a guy. So now here's a shell. Here's the head of the turtle and his little flippers and his tail. And sometimes in life, you know, you do have to go inward and protect yourself, because sometimes the game or the game you've been forced to play is not fun. But the cool thing about a turtle is the whole idea of the slow and steady wins the race. No one's looking. You put your little fins out there and you start crawling away from that bad situation. Like a really good friend of mine, his name's Carlos. We were on this epic road trip across the country. We pulled over to soak our feet in this creek. And and we're like wading through this creek, and it's really pretty, and there's this huge oak tree, and you can like see its roots like going into this creek. And he stops me. He's like, Austin, you see that tree? I'm like, yeah, man, I see the tree. What about it? He's like, people think they're like that tree, that like wherever they're at in life, that's where they have to be. They put their roots in, you know. You see people who will live in like a really crappy town because like that's just where their family lives, and they're told that like they can't go anywhere else. And then some like a little flock of birds flies by. He's like, Austin, we're even more free than those birds. Like, and then he pointed beyond those birds, like, you see that plane? Yeah, we're more free than those birds. You know, those birds, they're stuck being a bird. One day, if you want to be a tree, you can be a tree. One day, if you want to be a bird, you can go fly and be a bird. You know, people, these closed minds, and they're like, this is my reality, and I have to just live with this. And the truth is, the thing that I've learned is, while a good part of my life I've had to play the game, because like this is the society I've chosen to live in here in Salt Lake City, I realized, like, you can create your own reality. You can create your own game. And if you're the maker of the game, you can win pretty easy. You know, you're not living up to someone else's expectations. But there are kind of rules for life that you don't have ownership over, that you always have to answer to no matter who you are, whether you're Hitler, Jesus, Carly, this dude over here. Like, you know, there's rules if you want to exist that you have to live by. And then even beyond that, most of us don't want to just exist. We want to be happy. And so I'll try to tie up the loose ends here. That's really what we want. Like, I wouldn't do this show if it didn't bring me joy, And what brings me joy doing this show? One, the fact that the people here at Hotel RL even tolerate me doing something like this. Like, I just get to come here, put my little thing on a screen, and play guitar. And, I love sharing my music with people. And that's how it started. And then I realized I wanted the community to be more involved in this. And so we've been doing this show. It was every Friday, now it's Mondays, since the end of August. And now tonight we have Carly, and she shared some amazing poetry. And she has a blog. Do you want people to know about it? Or, yeah.
It's artsyaesthetics.wordpress.com. So.
But we want to be happy in life, and for me, what has brought me the most happiness was taking the time to be like a turtle, to go inward and be like, who am I? What makes me come alive? And I'll end with this final quote that I shared from a mountaintop once via video and YouTube and stuff, but I don't remember where I first read it, but the quote goes, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs of you, but rather ask yourself, what makes me come alive? Because what the world needs is people that are alive." I just see too many zombies walking around, on their phones. I remember seeing somewhere in Europe, they started putting padding around street, poles on the streets and stuff for street signs because people were just won't look up. And so you got to ask yourself, what makes me come alive? For me, it's music. It's conversations with people. And so I'm like, you know what? How can I create a reality where I can do that every day? And because if I can do it every day, I'm going to be happy. And so you got to ask yourself that. What makes me come alive? And the thing is, it's not just music. I'm sure it's not just poetry for you. It's a collection of things. But I do believe there are certain gifts we've been given that are more special than others, that need to be cultivated, that need to be shared, because that's God's way of kind of sharing love in the world. And yeah, so yeah, that's the show. I don't know if you had a final nail in the coffin poem or something to share, or any final thoughts, Carly?
I think you summed it up pretty good. I don't really have a poem that brings the whole thing together, but I think it's just, love life, experience it. You got this. You can just keep on doing it. Go through the cycle, learn what makes you happy, what you enjoy, and how you can help others be happy and bring them joy.
Amen to that. All right, well, all of our viewers here in the Hotel RL and across the country, have a great night. We got the extra hour back, so get outside, shake off the cobwebs from winter, soak up some rays, and live a good, happy, healthy